Hi, it's me, Will Be Live, and I'm a well-intentioned moron.
You've got your bow, you got your chain tied to me tight.
Welcome back to the Dancing Donkey Inn, where we find our middle-aged and follically challenged hero drowning his sorrow. After spilling a flag and a veil on my banana man looking ass mystic robes, I decide that it's time for an upgrade. And where am I going to obtain such a thing? The Mage Training Arena. To me, the Mage Training Arena has always been somewhere shrouded in mystique and intrigue. I can vaguely remember the Mage Arena upon its release in 2006, although I was never quite charming enough to convince my mum to pay for Runescape membership, and therefore was never able to experience the joys that awaited me behind that magical threshold. It turns out this place is fucking awful. Upon entering the arena, you're greeted by the entrance guardian, who seems like quite a nice chap. He gives you a brief overview of the history of the arena and lets you know about pizzazz points, which sound super jazzy and fun. He also gives you a lovely yet disgruntled hat, which looks like a pride version of the Harry Potter sorting hat, which I can only imagine must be J.K. Rowling's worst nightmare. The main allure of coming here is that the rewards themselves are actually pretty desirable. And although I didn't think it was possible to create an even goofier version of the Mystic Robes, the Infinity Robes seem to have some of the best magic stats available to mid-game level players, including the second best magic boots in the game. Upon discovering these stats in the wiki, I was super excited to get started and obtain my own set of Infinity Robes. I was so full of hope. Okay, so there are 4 exciting mini-games to choose from, each of which is associated with a certain point type. You need a certain number of each point type in order to acquire one of the items at the end of the whole process. The first minigame that I encountered was Telekinetic Theater, in which you are tasked with moving a stone guardian statue through a maze. It's not dissimilar to the kind of maze you would see within a laboratory, the kind they stick rats in for testing. Ironically, it didn't take long for me to begin feeling like I was stuck in some kind of social experiment. None of this is helped by the fact that it's all set within the Mage Arena basement, where the colour palette is bland and monotonous, and there's nothing really to distract from or detract from the fact that you're just stuck doing this really boring task over and over again. And only then do you realise, oh shit, you only get 2 points per task. I'm going to be here for a very, very long time. Tell my mum I love her. Thankfully and somewhat inexplicably, there's this little bird statue which tallies up your points. When it gets to 5, it will give you a bonus 8 pizzazz points and 10 law runes, I believe it is. I mean, I suppose this eases the blow very slightly, but it's still a bit of a kick in the teeth, if you ask me. Oh, it also gives you a little bonus payload of experience, as you saw there, hence the orgasming pufferfish. This may give you the impression that it's going to be pretty decent XP per hour. You would in fact be wrong. Okay, so 52k isn't as bad as I remember it being, in all honesty. But with that said, this is by no means a viable training alternative for Magic XP, at least in the current meta. My assumption would be that if it's not a viable training method, it should at least be fun. It made me wonder what the barometer for fun was back in 2006 when they were designing and developing these minigames, because they really feel like some kind of odd psychological experiment designed to determine the limitations of human mental fortitude. I also later went on to discover that the Mage Training Arena went through an update in May of 2024, which made some small changes to make the whole thing a little more tolerable. No significant changes were made to ensure that the activities became anywhere near enjoyable. It was about midway through Telekinetic Theater when I came to the realisation that my dream of obtaining the Infinity Robes was in fact a fallacy. The alternative plan was to go for Bones to Peaches, which I believe to be a very necessary spell a bit later in the game. It's something I've never acquired before, but my clan assured me that by the time I get to God Wars, it becomes invaluable. As an aside, at this point I hadn't appreciated that you can just buy the Infinity Robes on the GE. This means that the only item which you can exclusively obtain via the Mage Arena itself is the spell Bones to Peaches. So aside from obtaining this, the only reason you would ever come here is to greenlog the activity if you're a completionist. This obviously requires a certain level of insanity, which I can respect, but it also left me feeling a little bit saddened. By the end of Telekinetic Theater, I didn't know whether to embrace the Stone Guardian as a fellow captive of the arena, or to punch him in the face and make a break for my freedom. Little did I know that Telekinetic Theater is probably the most interesting of the 4 available minigames. Welcome to Creature Graveyard. Aptly named because this is where dreams and fun come to die, and creatures, apparently. In this riveting minigame, you're tasked with clicking on a tile on the floor thousands of times. That's pretty much it. In doing so, you're filling your inventory with bones, then you turn the bones into bananas via the spell Bones to Bananas, then you put them in a chute. Then you rinse and repeat this process until you've exhausted your will to live. I spent half of this activity looking at the wiki to try and figure out if there was another level of complexity to it that I was missing. There isn't. This is the entirety of the game. Oh, aside from bones that fall on your head every so often, doing 2 points of damage. You could in fact just tank these for the duration if you wanted to maximise efficiency, but in all honesty it became very slightly more entertaining for me to actually avoid them eventually, as I was desperate for another thing to focus on other than the pain in my hand, which was rapidly increasing due to all the incessant clicking. But well, this is one of the most action intensive minigames I've ever seen. Surely you get an inordinate amount of XP for your troubles, right? No, you get fuck all. In my experience, Creature Graveyard is by far the least efficient way of gaining Mage XP within the Mage training arena. I think I probably peaked at around 35k, and 35k XP per hour is diabolically bad when considering literally any other magic training alternative in the game. Oh, and I forgot to mention that each inventory of bananas is worth 1 to 2 pizzazz points, so don't worry, you're very well compensated for your time. Creature Graveyard is not only very mentally frustrating, it's also very physically taxing. There were points in this game where I considered channeling my inner Karen and taking Jagex to court over this minigame being the leading contributor to my burgeoning repetitive strain injury. Honestly, I feel like in America you could probably make a case for that. By the time I reached 200 points, I'd sincerely considered allowing the bones to knock me out, so that I may be finally released from this eternal condemnation. Unfortunately, I'm made of tougher stuff, I like to think, and so I stayed the course, moving on to the next activity, which was the Enchanting Chamber, which was actually comparatively fine. The Enchanting Chamber boasts some semi-decent XP rates, especially when considering the last 2 trials that I just endured. This was really a breath of fresh air. I felt like the ball had just started rolling. I mean, is it enjoyable? Is it something that I would integrate into my current magic skilling regime? No, it's not fun. Even if this was a sponsored segment, I would not be able to, in good faith, tell you that this is a fun activity, because I would be lying. I mean, it's essentially this children's block-shaped colour matching game, which we all played as a child. If you have the mental age of a 3-year-old, it must be the most exciting thing in the world. I feel like one of the developers must have looked over at their child lovingly as they played with their toy, and thought to themselves, I've struck gold here. That would work perfectly with the Mage training arena, and better yet, people will have to pay for it. Yeah, it's just more nonsense, unfortunately. The game is essentially picking up the block that is called from a pile, high alching it, and then once you've turned it into an orb, you put it into a chute. That's the game. Fortunately, this game is relatively inoffensive. Its biggest failing is just being egregiously boring. But other than that, fine. If you're using a relatively high level of enchantment, you can gain a decent amount of XP and, more importantly, a decent amount of points, which means that this is a purgatory you can escape relatively quickly. And so I did. I emerged from the other side pretty much unscathed, beginning to believe that the finish line was just around the corner. Welcome to the Alchemist Playground. Yeah, this place is a bit shit as well. I can only imagine that the game is named Playground ironically. The devs were surely aware of this. I feel like it's an in-joke of some kind. So the idea here is take items from a cupboard, alch them, put the coins into a chute, win the game. Again, it suffers from the same failings as the other 3 games. Everything is just completely and utterly one-dimensional. Bear in mind that I am using a Runescape plugin, which does eradicate any level of difficulty that would have been there in the first place, but I don't think the Mage training arena would ever have been difficult, only frustrating, which in my humble opinion doesn't make for a good gameplay loop. If you consider more modern minigames like Guardians of the Rift, there is an element of challenge there, which goes some way towards removing the aspect of tedium that seems to define the tasks within the Mage training arena. It seems like Jagex during this time had not quite arrived at what makes a satisfying grind within Runescape. In general, my attitude towards the Mage arena tasks was, let's just get this over with, which ideally wouldn't be the case within any activity in old school Runescape. In saying that, the Alchemist Playground, like the Enchanting Chamber before it, is relatively good XP. Yeah, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I can't really knock it in this sense. I mean, obviously for the most part you're high alching, which is a legitimate method of leveling your magic in general, but the benefits of doing it here are that you get free items, and you get a bonus in experience when depositing the coins into the chute. The downside, of course, is that you're not making any profit when you're alching these items. Could you make an argument that this is more entertaining than backstanding for 8 hours whilst high alching? I think you probably could, but then again you're stuck in this basement on your own, without being privy to the always entertaining bot cog formation, which just never gets old. I managed to get into a semi-decent rhythm during this minigame. I was trying to make kind of slight optimizations as I went through all of them, but this one seemed the most satisfying, and I do use the term satisfying very lightly. Oh, would you look at that, I managed to gain a level from the Mage training arena. I guess the training really was worth it, after all. This really was one of the saddest levels I've ever attained in Runescape. What you don't see is that there was an intermission between recording because I had to go and have a lie down partway through the process in order to somewhat preserve my sanity. And then finally, I deposited the last 10,000 coins. The last tally required to obtain the Bones to Peaches spell, and emerged from my dungeon like a captive just seeing the light of day for the first time in years. As I rubbed the crust of turmoil from my eyes, I made my shaky way to the rewards guardian, whimpering as I did so, and hastily obtained the Bones to Peaches spell, relishing that collection log ding. I'd like to tell you that I felt a sense of achievement, but I didn't. Only a feeling of loss and nostalgia for a time past. A time before my knowledge of the Mage Arena, when it had remained a mystery. A mystery that should never have been uncovered. Don't worry guys, I'm back in the dancing donkey getting my pish on. I would have to give the Mage Training Arena a well-advisor score of 3 out of 10. I would not wish this activity upon my worst enemy, because my worst enemy is a dullard and would probably enjoy it. I don't intend to go back there, but chat will inevitably force me to do so in order to greenlog the place. Thank you for watching. You really didn't need to do that, but you did, and that's lovely. If you liked the video, you probably found pleasure in my pain, which is a bit warped of you, but I appreciate you doing so regardless. Like the video, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and share it with your friends maybe. Help me get some traction. That would be nice. Have a lovely day. See you soon.